Okay, hello, Mr. King. My name is Victor Alvarez. I spoke to you briefly about what I'm doing at work with the Summer Youth Program at Columbia University. It's called Just Arts Lab, and right now we're doing expression through the arts through the three different venues, which is videography, music, and graphic designs. The theme is about violence in our communities, communities of color. So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Oh, well, community servant here in the 12th District, in which I am the council member, which covers Baychester, Edenwald, Gun Hill, Co-op City sections of the Bronx. This is the neighborhood I grew up in. So I've learned all the nooks and crannies of the 12th District and this North Bronx neighborhood. I'm glad to say I'm a proud resident of it. It educated and it raised me, and it's no better joy than to sit here and represent the community that educated and raised me, from PS 41 to an Evander Childs High School graduate. This is home for me. So after going to college and getting a degree in communications, I came back here and did volunteer work. I worked with the city for a while in Special Olympics and one of the largest unions, 1199, before I ran for office at the request of neighbors, because they've seen the work that I was doing for young people and for everyone here to offer advocacy as well as opportunities for our children. So that's who I am, and I'll stay committed to that cause. One of the greatest things that I think the work that I've done is starting the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, and that's right after I met a young man by the name of Victor Alvarez.
Okay, cool. Another question is, what historical connections do you see from your youth growing up that you still see today now in our communities as far as the violence?
Well, I think one of the things that have been consistent when I was growing up, there was always some form of gang activity that occurred. See, when I was growing up, we had the Peacemakers and the Black Spades that moved throughout the North Bronx. And today, it's kind of grown into another element where you have crews. And crews, whether you are from different blocks, they think to come together and fight. And then after a while, some of these crews merge themselves to make themselves bigger gangs. At the end of the day, what I like to see when it comes to this type of activity is that young people get together to partner themselves to do positive things, not hurt themselves. But when it comes to our communities, if we're not fed the proper things, we end to engage in negative things.
Okay. How do you feel about Ronald Reagan implementing gun control laws after the Panther Party armed themselves for self-defense against police brutality?
Well, let's go back and call it for what it is. I give it to you real deep. Anytime you get blacks that get empowered, the system here in America gets threatened. It goes back to the beginning. And about a month ago, I passed two resolutions in the New York City Council, one called Resolution 1000 and one called Resolution 1001. Resolution 1000 declares March 5th as 3/5 Clause Awareness Day. Now, many people may not know what the 3/5 Clause is in the United States Constitution. Well, in a nutshell, the 3/5 Clause in the Constitution says that the slave, the black in America, is 3/5 of a human being. That was the negotiation between the North and the Southern states at the 1787 Convention, when they was trying to figure out representation for taxation purposes, and it was more slaves in the South than there were in the North. And the North said, you're not going to get all that representation because you have more slaves. Everyone knows the slave in America was about 95% black. So the compromise was made that the blacks would be considered 3/5 of a human being. That language today still exists in the United States Constitution. People don't know it. I went to Congress and asked them about removing it. They told me that they don't remove, they amend. And when they told me the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment does away with the 3/5 Clause compromise. When I did research on all three of those amendments, the 13th Amendment, contrary to popular belief, not the Emancipation Proclamation, was the 13th Amendment that freed the slaves and made slavery unlawful unless you're incarcerated. So if you're incarcerated, you're in slavery according to the United States Constitution. So people may think slavery is dead in America. Not. It still exists. Look at the penal system. The 14th Amendment said if you're born in this country, you have all the rights, protections, and privileges under the Constitution. So you made us a citizen. Great, thank you. The 15th Amendment gave blacks the right to vote regardless of your ethnicity or your prior history of servitude. So the 13th Amendment, which said that person that you consider 3/5 of a human being, a slave, you said they're free unless they go to jail. You also said their citizens will protect them, and then you gave them the right to vote. But not either one of those amendments ever said that the person you consider 3/5 of a human being is now 100% whole, equal to the people who are established in this system. That's the problem that we have here in America today. Anytime you do anything that empowers black people, the system will say, hey, we have a right to knock down the black person because we still don't consider them a whole human being according to the system. So while we continue to rally and put funding and do all that we can to try to get justice and equality, until you change the rules of the game and the rules of the game, because we're a society that operates by rules, until you change the rules, they have the opportunity and the option to follow the rule that was in the mother doctrine. So until you kill that virus, and I mean really kill the virus, it's like almost trying to give syphilis some aspirin, some peroxide, and a Band-Aid and hoping it'll go away. No, you got to get the right penicillin for it. And that's what we need for the illness that we have in America that forces race relationships never to be equal, goes back to the Constitution. And until we put a shot of penicillin and do away with that, we will always be like a dog chasing its tail. So I had a resolution passed called Resolution 1001, calling on Congress to to amend the Constitution, adding language that totally negates the 3/5 clause compromise, stating that that slave, the black in America, is 100% whole. When we do that, we can start having real conversations about policies and race relations and economic strategies that helps all Americans, specifically the black in America.
Okay, thank you. Definitely, that was very deep. Another one is, what is the role that politics plays in discrimination and racism? Which I think you kind of answered that too.
Exactly.
That, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So, next one is, what do you think is the role of violence in social justice?
The role of violence in social justice keeps social justice going on. At the end of the day, you know, we would love to be people that we can get along, but I go back to, again, we can have all these conversations, but until you get to the root of the sickness, which is that 3/5 in the Constitution. If you didn't have that in, if you didn't, what kind of social justice would we be talking about? Because the economy would be fair. You would have to treat me equal. The law enforcement can't just kill me and always get off. My schools will always have the resources that it has. We wouldn't have food deserts. You wouldn't feed me garbage and give my kids, you know, the worst things that you have after you prepare food. You wouldn't have liquor stores all over our communities. When you start talking about social justice, these are the things in the society that helps us say we're okay. But it's the scale is unbalanced. And that's what we're asking for justice, to bring the scales of justice on an equal playing field. But you'll never do that if the rules are unbalanced. How are you going to fight for something that's unbalanced to get it balanced? Well, it starts back. What tilted the scale? What tilted the scale? When they put this society together, it started out unbalanced. You had Caucasians who were running the system who said, we're here, and everyone else is here. So until you change the rules to bring it up here, then we'll always be talking about social justice. We'll be always rallying. We'll be always begging the person whose job was to make sure that you don't have what I have to please let me get some. That doesn't make sense, because their job is not to let you have it, because I don't have to give it to you because I'm better than you. The system says I'm better than you. Even the poorest of poorest Caucasians will stand in front of a black person and act like they're better than a black person.
Okay, so how does not empowering the youth and educating them the right way plays a role in the violence in our communities?
That's one of the number one impacts on how young people respond. Not being fed the proper nourishment when they were children. You got to empower kids to help them understand the world that they live in. You have to educate kids to understand what yesterday was about. You got to educate them what it is to be black in America, or any young person in America. But that's an unfair statement, because it's not like any other kids are targeted other than black and Hispanic kids to be failures. Black and Hispanic kids are targeted to knock them down. And at the end of the day, for me, black is the same thing. It doesn't make a difference if you're from Haiti, Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, Montserrat, St. Kitts, Puerto Rico, Dominica. It doesn't make any difference. Georgia, Alabama. In the eyes of this system, you're still black in America. Because we might speak a different language, because you might have been from some part of Nicaragua or Venezuela, as opposed to someone who's in Brazil or someone who is from Florida, it doesn't mean anything, because the system still sees you as a black person. And that's what we got to understand. So we got to help our kids understand the synergy we need to have. We need to let our kids understand the history of us. And because My brother might speak, a little twang to his language, or one might be a little more fair skinned, or someone might be a little darker skinned. Our history, you have to understand that history is the same. You can take a person from Honduras and put them next to a person who is from the Jamaica, and stand somebody in there from the back roads of Georgia. If they didn't open their mouths, you wouldn't know where they were from. People need to learn their history and need to teach our children, because our children emulate what the adults do. So if the adults act ignorant, if the adults act like they don't have a clue, if the adults are disrespectful, what do you think your little kid is going to do? They're going to do the same thing that you've done. So we have a responsibility to take the things that will help us stay as strong as black families growing up and get it to our children. We have lost that. There's been a disconnect between yesterday's struggle and today's existence. And since kids don't understand the struggle of what our forefathers have gone through to get us to this point, they're messing it up. Everyone would love for us to have kumbaya moments. The kumbaya moments for us is a way to suppress us, because if kids actually knew what we're going through and what we're still going through, there'd be a lot of angry kids here. But the thing is, you don't always have to punish somebody back. They say don't get mad, get even. Well, you get even by being a better person. You get better by making sure that your neighborhood is doing a lot better. You get better by helping changing rules in society. You get better by being a smarter person. You get better by loving your friends, loving your neighbor, more important, loving yourself. If that's what we need our brothers and sisters to learn how to do, as opposed to following what's being projected on television screen to teach you how to act and teach you how to behave. Because what's being shown on these reality TVs and some of these wicked sitcoms is just foolish buffoonery. And until our kids understand you can't do this all day chasing Pokemon, you should be picking up the book to find out what was your heritage like in 1787. What was the world like for your brother and sister in 1500s? What was the struggles in the 1960s? And how did we get through the 70s to make it to 2016? And how much more work do we have to do as a community so we can survive as a community, until we can save our community?
Good, definitely. That was good too. Last question is, what do you think are some solutions to the violence in our community?
Some solutions, it all goes back to education. Once you get education, you can provide opportunity. But those of us who have been able to offer ourselves some opportunity needs to bring back opportunities to the next generation. So I take it for every entertainer, every brother and sister that's out here is making millions and millions of dollars, you need to make sure that you build opportunity. I'm not just talking about coming back, giving $500,000 check to the Boys and Girls Club. I mean, investing some real time in it, creating jobs. There's enough black people who are making good money out here. They can come together and help the next generation build themselves. That's what you got to do. People need to see hope. If people don't see hope and no opportunity, only thing they live in is despair. And when you live in despair, there comes a whole host of elements. It's a whole lovely job resume for if you want to live the life of despair. But we need to offer our young people the opportunity of hope. And when you see hope and you see opportunity and the way to get the place, you're not thinking about trying to take somebody's sneakers, because I got my sneakers. If you already have things, you're not trying to take other people's things. And also learning how to say, I'm okay with who I am as a person. I'm rich inside. If I'm rich inside, and the Lord's going to provide for you. He's going to provide you for your clothing and your shelter and something to eat if you're good inside, if you're doing the right things. But when you fall off the deep end and want to do everything else society tells you to do, go back to this has saved so many souls. And some people don't want to believe it, but things were ordained before we all were born. And we are misleading ourselves, misleading themselves to think that they're the end all, the be all in this giant galaxy that we live in. So I just say to everyone, if you haven't found a higher power, find a higher power to build your spirituality. Because when you are feeling good about yourself and you feel good about your surroundings, a lot of things won't even come towards you. But when you're that evil person and you're running around in wickedness, that's all that you know, and that's all that you're going to breed towards yourself is wickedness.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time, and I definitely appreciate your time for taking time out your day to kind of help me out on my project.
God bless you.